This podcast is brought to you by the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania.
This Week in Small Business.
All right, great to welcome back Gene Marks, CEO of the Marks Group, and also a contributor who you may see writing about small business in a variety of publications, both here in the United States and abroad. Gene, great to talk to you again. I assume you are doing okay through all of this?
I'm doing fine, Dan. Thank you. I'm also quarantined just like you in Center City, Philadelphia. But surviving fine. Thank God for Netflix.
Yeah. Well, okay. Mine's Disney Plus because of all the Star Wars stuff, but we're on the same line of thinking here.
Do you really want to go there, Dan? We're supposed to talk about small business.
I know.
All I really feel like talking about is Ozark and Better Call Saul. But okay, we can
there you go. So let's get into this because now we're starting to see states reopen their economies a little bit. And I guess there are questions about what businesses have to consider when they're opening. When thinking about small businesses, what are the areas that you are looking at as these companies start to reopen?
Yeah, so I mean that's going to be the next the next big wave of conversation now is reopening and reemerging into the economy. So I have a lot of clients that are asking me the same question. So some thoughts, right? First of all, I like to look at what some of the big companies are doing for starters. I mean, I'm like Disney right now is coming public with what their plans are for reopening. Imagining reopening Disney World in the middle of all of this, some of the precautions that they have to be taking. I think if you're a small business owner and you're about to reopen your business at some point, you should be watching what Disney is doing, what Walmart is doing, what Macy's is doing, what some of the other big boxers, Starbucks, just from a safety perspective. And I work with because they're going to be the models that you're going to have to emulate. And there are a lot of small businesses, Dan, that have been operating through all of this, essential businesses that are still up and around. And they've, a lot of them have done a lot of good stuff that you should also be emulating. It is the biggest thing is going to be about safety, right? I mean, you and I want to go out to restaurants and I want to go into stores. I mean, I'm anxious to get back to real life, but even I will be hesitant to go and frequent a business if I don't feel safe walking in the doors. And of course, your employees have to feel safe coming to work as well. So there are certain things that just every business is going to have to be doing, Dan. I mean, you gotta be doing temperature checks.
Yeah.
If you can get your hold on diagnostic tests. You're going to want to be doing that with your employees. You're going to want to have hand sanitizers and, cleaning down surfaces and not holding meetings and keeping people working from home as much as possible and displaying a lot of communications on the walls and by email as to what the rules are and the safety precautions are so that everybody feels comfortable. But, man, there's going to be a slew of issues, right? I mean, what happens if an employee doesn't want to participate or take a temperature check or
Sure.
take a diagnostic? What do you do?
Yeah, and this is not going to be something that's just going to occur in the first week or two of a business reopening. This is going to be something that's going to be more of and I've used this term a lot lately, it's going to be a new normal for small business and big business as well.
Yeah, it really is. And it's certainly going to be the case over the next 3 to 6 months. That's where things will be operating. But then, I do expect, normalcy to reoccur. I do expect people, more treatments to become available. I do expect that the data will get better, but I hope will make people feel a little bit more comfortable that, even, God forbid you get, COVID-19.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people already. I was just talking to a guy. He's the accounting manager at one of my clients. He tested positive. He didn't even know it. I mean, he's 62 years old, and it was part of a company test. So he's quarantined, but he feels fine. Who knows how many people are out there? You and I probably, who knows, right? And
yeah.
And when you start getting that data, you start thinking like, okay, maybe, it's not as bad. We can still have a bit of a normal economy here. That's got to take some time for us to sink in now.
Let me ask you something, because there was a recent Goldman Sachs survey that came out that talked with small businesses and how they're being impacted by the coronavirus. And the takeaway from it was that business models are going to be changed forever. And that's a significant statement when you think about where we are now and how small businesses really developed over the last, half century or so, and where it may be going in the future. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, when people say like, "Oh, we'll be feeling the effects of this, forever," I don't really buy into that whole theory, Dan. I mean, I just, I think people will never forget this. I mean, 10 years from now, you and I will be talking and be like, "Oh my God, remember that crazy stuff going on, the coronavirus? That was ridiculous,"
Yeah.
But I think a lot of things are going to go back to normal in the way they were. Having said that, there are some things that should have happened that didn't happen until this happened, and now it will happen forever. For example, work from home. I can't tell you how many clients I have that have been resisting having their employees work from home. And when we talk about a new workplace model, there are going to be a lot more people working from home forever because people have learned that the technology works and all those cloud-based applications and systems really do have value. And so people are going to be, I think a lot of employers will be open. And that's a good thing for employers because, they can recruit more employees and be more flexible. They don't necessarily have to be local employees. So that certainly will be one thing. And then, you just mentioned before how like Neiman Marcus, they announced bankruptcy and, you hear about other businesses, brick and mortar businesses that are struggling. And, it just kind of accelerated the inevitable. There are a lot of businesses that if they have not adopted, an online plan, selling stuff by e-commerce, and they're just thinking that the brick and mortar world is always going to be this way, those companies aren't going to last either. So that will be a permanent change, I think, in a business model. You have to have those kinds of other ways to make money. So, I think then finally, supply chain, I think, will change significantly. I do think that businesses will really be looking at themselves and saying, I just can't be relying on China anymore. I'll be willing to pay a few dollars more to give you some more diversification and security, to have other options with my supply chain. And I think that's going to be a very long-term effect of all of this.
Well, and I think a lot of people will say, Gene, if you're going to start, and this has been something that's been covered quite a bit in the last week or so, if there is a call to maybe change that supply chain a little bit and not have it so reliant on operations that may be in China, where are those operations going to be coming from? Are they going to be coming from other countries, or are some of these operations going to be moving back here into the United States?
I think they won't happen in the United States unless there is a combination of government and private investment to make it happen. If the government was able to spend $2 trillion, on stimulus checks, I think a lot of questions are going to be asked as to whether or not they can spend, a substantial amount of money to incentivize companies to build infrastructure here and manufacturing firms here to do that kind of work. And that'll take a little bit of time. That's what's going to be. It's going to need a leadership from Washington to do something like this. And their biggest fight against this, Dan, in the end, if you're running a business and you can buy something for 2 cents cheaper from China, you're going to do it unless you really have other reasons not to. It's just human nature, Yeah. So that's what they're up against is providing a real business value from moving your supply chain over here. And those are challenges that are only going to be done if we have a national movement to do that.
Well, you talked about how business is going to change and work from home is going to change. Obviously, we've all, I think, become somewhat reliant on conferencing platforms. And it's something that you have written about recently about how people are using these. And even as simple as just turning the camera on or not turning it on.
So I got to ask you that, like, when you get invited to a Zoom conference, do you automatically put your video on or do you not?
Yes, I do.
You do. Okay. Well, first of all, that's because you're a lot better looking than me. I've seen your photo. Okay. I tend to avoid doing it. I've always thought they give you a conference call number, so I call in the number. And then just because of this whole quarantine thing, I'm sitting at my desk anyway. So I'm like, okay, I'm invited to a Zoom conference. I'll click on with my video. I suddenly realized everybody's got their video on. Like I'm the one guy calling in without the video.
Yeah.
And now I start thinking to myself, like, geez, all this time I've been pretty rude. nobody said anything to me, but I think it's kind of rude. I think that's like a cultural shift that's happening because of quarantining and using these these video conferencing systems. I think a lot of people, particularly guys like me, I wasn't thinking twice of it before. Now I guess I got to use video, which means I got to put on a nice shirt and comb what's left of my hair and I guess take a shower more often. I don't know. All the costs of operating in a pandemic.
Some of us don't have to worry about combing our hair there, Gene, so we don't have to worry about it. But it is interesting, and I think part of this is also the fact that, we obviously are separated from the people we normally see at least 8 hours a day. So even if we're on that conference for, 30 minutes once a week, you still want to be able to see those people. You want to have that visual contact.
I kind of like it. I mean, it's kind of fun to be on there. It's fun to see these people that I don't normally see anyway. A lot of them are clients. It's kind of fun to see their homes. I think it's hilarious when like goofy stuff, a kid walks in in the middle of the call or a dog appears. It's human. It's funny. I like to see how people decorate the rooms that they're in because you get it all over the case. Yeah. And then, of course, there's just the endless stream of viral videos. Did you see the video of the woman who she was on a conference call with her work, Zoom, and she brought her laptop into the bathroom by mistake? She thought her video was turned off.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So there's some funny things that come out of it, too. And I don't know. I like it. I've learned. This has been one of the things I've learned during this whole thing.
So for a lot of small businesses, obviously they're running tight to the margins right now, and one of the things that we've talked about on this show in the past couple of years has been the growth of crowdfunding, and I guess there's more and more ways that crowdfunding can be used by small business to be able to try and help get them through some of these tough times.
So crowdfunding has always been a really great place to go and raise money for your business, particularly if you've got an invention, an idea. Remember, this is not GoFundMe. This is like Indiegogo and other platforms that take crowdfunding money where you've got an invention and you need people to raise money that way. Now, if you were a certain size, the SEC has sort of had bunch of regulations about crowdfunding over the past few years, which has limited the ability of businesses to really go and get a lot of equity funding on the crowdfunding platforms. But you're absolutely right that just recently, and as a response to the pandemic, the SEC has relaxed some rules for companies that want to do crowdfunding. They've lifted certain reporting requirement restrictions, and if you are going to crowdfund and looking for some significant money that way, and you've been affected by CV-19, or you're working on something related to CV-19, a drug or something healthcare related, you can apply to the SEC for this and get fast-track approval to be able to list your company on one of the crowdfunding platforms and raise some money that way. So it's not only been a good source for businesses in the past, but because of the pandemic, there are a lot more opportunities to do crowdfunding. And the best thing I can recommend to you is there's a great piece written on TechCrunch about this. TechCrunch is a great technology website all about the SEC lifting restrictions. If you're thinking of raising money for your business and you've been affected by CV-19, this could be another really great way for you to get some equity.
What are you hearing about the success of the second round of payroll protection program loans, grants that have been going out in terms of their success? Are they getting more towards small businesses? And also, where do you think we are right now and whether or not we're going to need maybe another round of those types of loans? It's something that Larry Kudlow has already addressed and thinks that it's a distinct possibility.
Yeah, Kudlow has said. So first round, $350 billion, money went in about a week. And it turns out that a lot of that money that went to larger companies that may not, publicly held companies that had less than 500 employees or were able to finagle their structures so that they could be less than 500 employees, although they had other options for financing, and they took a lot of the money, and that was a big uproar. So the second round came in, it was again about a week ago, $310 billion. Right now, about 80% of that money has been loaned out, so it's going. Having said that, 4 million loans have been given under this Paycheck Protection Program, and the average loan size has significantly decreased when compared to the first round, which means that more money is going out to smaller businesses.
Right.
There's been some criticism of the SBA's approach because they say that a lot of money has been going, it hasn't been going to businesses in more affected areas. So that will be something that we'll look back and see. But the SBA has been given smaller banks and financial institutions the chance to get their customers' loan applications out there in front of the big banks. They just did that last week where they sort of froze the big banks out so the smaller banks can do that. So having said all that, I think it's absolutely an improvement over the first round. I think the money is getting out there. I think we are going to have, you and I are going to talk 8 weeks from now, Dan, about the forgiveness tidal wave. Because, 8 weeks from now, a lot of these small businesses are going to be asking for money back from their banks, and that's going to be a whole other mishkabooble,
Wow.
Third round funding may be needed.
Mishkabooble. I think that's the first time I've ever heard that on this channel before.
I'm going to say it again when we get closer, because that's what it's going to be. Do I think there'll be a third round? That remains to be seen. There's not a lot of support for it in Congress right now. But Dan, the people that really need that third round, if I was the one calling the shots, I would target certain industries. The restaurant industry, I think above all else, are the ones that are hurting the most among my clients, small businesses. And I would hope that if there is a third round, there might be some more precedence or some more priority given to restaurateurs. They're in a tough situation right now, and they're going to face a very tough 6 months ahead of them to get back on their feet.
Gene, as always, great to talk to you. Be safe, and we'll catch up with you again down the road.
Thank you, Dan. You take care and stay well.
Thank you. Gene Marks, CEO of the Marks Group, and also a contributor on a variety of publications around the globe.
To keep engaged with Wharton Business Daily and other Wharton School shows, visit businessradio.wharton.upenn.edu.